An elaborate series of stone monuments believed to have been hidden for thousands of years, not far from the famous site of Stonehenge. And it suggests that mysteries that shroud this region are bigger than many of us even thought.
Stonehenge has been a source of mystery for thousands of years. But this week, the prehistoric monument may have given up one of its long-kept secrets.
A new analysis shows that the 6-ton iconic altar stone at the heart of Stonehenge, the discovery shows that its construction was a far greater collaborative effort than scientists believe.
Stonehenge has stood for thousands of years as one of the world's most mysterious monuments, a prehistoric wonder that has baffled historians, archaeologists, and tourists alike. But recent research is shaking up everything we thought we knew about it. A new study reveals surprising details about one of the site's central stones, the altar stone.
New research reveals that 5,000 years ago, the altar stone, largely buried at the centre of the ring, was brought from northern Scotland and not from Wales as previously thought.
That could change our understanding of who built Stonehenge, where the stones came from, and why they were placed here in the first place. From lost quarries in northern Britain to unusual chemical compositions, the findings raise more questions than answers. Stick around as we dive into this shocking discovery and explore the secrets Stonehenge may have been hiding all along. The mystery of Stonehenge. Stonehenge is one of those places that instantly sparks curiosity. You've probably seen pictures of it. A ring of huge stones standing in the middle of an open plain in England. It sits on Salisbury Plain, about 8 miles north of Salisbury in Wiltshire. At first glance, it might just look like a bunch of old rocks arranged in a circle. But when you start to dig deeper, you realize it's a lot more than that. These stones weren't randomly placed. They're arranged in a pattern that seems to mirror the movements of the sun and moon. The main entrance lines up perfectly with the sunrise on the summer solstice. That's the longest day of the year. Then there's the opposite side, which catches the sunset on the winter solstice, the shortest day. Some parts even align with the equinoxes, when day and night are the same length. Whoever built this clearly knew what they were doing. And that's where things get interesting. For thousands of years, people have been trying to figure out why it was built in the first place.
It's one of the most famous prehistoric monuments in the world, and also one of the most mysterious.
Was it some sort of ancient calendar? A burial ground for important figures? Maybe a place of worship or healing? Each theory makes sense in its own way, but none quite fits all the clues. Of course, humans love a good mystery, so it didn't stop there. Some people have gone full-on imaginative, suggesting Stonehenge was a portal to another world, a landing pad for aliens, or even a hotspot for powerful Earth energies. Sounds wild, right? But when you're staring at something that old and that precise, it's hard not to wonder if there's more to it than meets the eye. Before we start unraveling the wild theories, though, let's go back to the basics. How on earth was Stonehenge actually built? Because that's another question that's been bugging researchers for centuries. How did people, thousands of years ago, without cranes, trucks, or even wheels as we know them, move and stack stones that weigh tons? What kind of teamwork, tools, or maybe even lost knowledge did they rely on?
How exactly the stone was transported so far is unclear. If it came over land, people would have had to bring it through dense forests and over mountains.
How Stonehenge was built. Sweat, stones, and centuries of mystery. When you stand in front of Stonehenge today, it's easy to forget just how old it really is. Archaeologists believe this iconic site wasn't built all at once, but in stages, over 1,000 years actually. Imagine a project that started in the late Stone Age and stretched into the early Bronze Age. Generation after generation continued to add, change, and rearrange these stones. That's some serious long-term commitment. It all began around 3000 BCE. The first thing people built wasn't even the stone circle we see today. They began by digging a massive ditch, approximately 328 feet across, and piling the earth into a raised bank within the ditch. The result was a circular enclosure with two entrances, one facing northeast and another facing southwest. Inside that enclosure, they dug 56 pits, which archaeologists now call the Aubrey Holes. What were those pits for? That's still up for debate. Some experts think they held wooden posts or smaller stones. Others found cremated human remains in some of them, suggesting the area might have served as an early cemetery. Along with bones, archaeologists discovered pottery, animal remains, and flint tools, signs that people gathered here for rituals or ceremonies. Maybe it was a sacred meeting ground, a burial site, or even both. Then, around 2500 BCE, things got serious. This is when the builders brought in the famous bluestones. These weren't local, they came from the Preseli Hills in Wales, over 150 miles away. That's like hauling giant rocks from Lagos to Ibadan, with no trucks, no cranes, and no highways. Each stone weighed about 8,000 pounds, and they had a striking bluish tint when wet. Some even had natural grooves that might have made it easier to fit them together. So, how did people move stones that heavy across that kind of distance? There are several theories, and all of them sound equally exhausting.
They must have been very technically advanced to be able to do that, to bring it down by boat, bring it down on sledges or whatever. To bring this to here, a sort of focus in a way at that time, there must have been linking between all of these areas.
One idea is that they made wooden sledges and rolled the stones over tree trunks, slowly dragging them across the land. Another suggests they floated them along rivers on rafts, using the Welsh coast and then the River Avon to reach Salisbury Plain. Some even believe they built massive wicker baskets or used oxen to drag them over land. Whichever method they used, one thing is clear. It took coordination, strength, and a lot of patience. Imagine hundreds of people pulling together, literally, to move one stone. By around 2400 BCE, those bluestones were finally standing, arranged in two concentric circles. But that was only phase 2. The third stage kicked off around 2300 BCE, and this is when the big boys arrived. The sarsen stones. These massive sandstone blocks weighed up to 50,000 pounds each. They were quarried from the Marlborough Downs, about 20 miles away. Compared to the bluestones, these were enormous. To shape and smooth them, workers used stone hammers and chisels. To move them, they relied on ropes, wooden sleds, and earthen ramps. To fit them together, they got creative, using mortise and tenon joints, like those used in carpentry, to secure the upright stones and tongue and groove joints to link the horizontal lintels. When they finished, the sarsen circle stood roughly 100 feet across, with lintels forming a continuous ring on top, kind of like a stone crown. Inside that ring, 5 pairs of taller stones created a horseshoe shape, with the tallest reaching over 30 feet high. The whole structure was perfectly aligned with the solstices, the longest and shortest days of the year.
It looks like a sandstone rock that's micaceous, so it's a little bit glittery. You would think, oh wow, there's rocks like this in pretty close to here.
The builders probably used simple sighting methods, like wooden poles and ropes, to track the sun's movements. So Stonehenge wasn't just a monument, it was a massive prehistoric calendar, marking the rhythm of the seasons. Then came the fourth stage, around 2200 BCE. The builders rearranged the bluestones within the main circle. Some were moved into a smaller inner circle, while others were placed in a horseshoe shape mirroring the larger one. This wasn't random. Researchers believe these changes were meant to enhance the monument's sound. Yes, sound. Some scientists say the placement of the bluestones created echoes and vibrations during ceremonies or rituals. It wasn't just a visual experience, it was acoustic engineering, prehistoric style. The fifth stage, around 2000 BCE, brought even more changes. More bluestones arrived, possibly from another quarry in Wales. These were arranged in an oval between the Sarsen Circle and the Horseshoe. Many of them aligned with key solar and lunar events. Some stones even showed signs of being polished or rubbed, suggesting people believed they had healing powers. Finally, the sixth stage came around 1520 BCE. Two new rings of pits, known as the Y and Z holes, were dug around the main circle. No one knows why. Maybe they planned to add more stones that never arrived. Maybe it was symbolic. Either way, that marked the end of major construction at Stonehenge. By around 1100 BCE, the site was abandoned. The ceremonies, gatherings, and burials stopped. For thousands of years, the stone stood silently, weathering wind, rain, and time itself. Fast forward to modern times, Stonehenge got official protection in 1882, one of Britain's first legally protected monuments. In 1986, UNESCO added it to the World Heritage List, sealing its status as one of the most famous prehistoric sites on Earth. Now, millions visit every year. Some come for the history, others for the mystery. And a few, the dreamers, still wonder if there's something magical about those stones. Because for all we've uncovered, one question still lingers. Why was Stonehenge really built? Was it spiritual, scientific, both, or something entirely beyond our understanding?
The mystery of Stonehenge has fascinated the world for centuries. Every year, more than 1 million tourists visit the site in southwest England that dates back more than 4,000 years.
The myths and the people behind Stonehenge. For centuries, people have tried to explain how and why Stonehenge came to be. And some of those explanations have been pretty wild. One of the most famous early stories came from a 12th century writer named Geoffrey of Monmouth, who's also the guy responsible for giving us much of the King Arthur legend. Back then, his writings were taken seriously, almost like history textbooks. According to Geoffrey, Stonehenge wasn't built by regular humans at all. Nope, it was the work of the wizard Merlin. The story goes that in the mid-5th century, hundreds of British nobles were killed by invading Saxons and buried on Salisbury Plain. To honor the dead, King Aurelius Ambrosius, Arthur's uncle in the legend, wanted to build a grand memorial. So he sent an army to Ireland to fetch a mystical stone circle called the Giant's Ring, supposedly made by giants from magical African bluestones. The soldiers got there, fought bravely, and won. But there was one problem. The stones were far too heavy to move. That's when Merlin, being the ultimate problem solver, used his magic to transport the entire monument across the sea and set it up right where Stonehenge now stands. According to the legend, both Aurelius and his brother Uther Pendragon, King Arthur's father, were buried beneath it. For a long time, people actually believed that story. And honestly, can you blame them? It's got everything. Kings, giants, wizards, and mysterious stones from faraway lands. But, of course, there's one small issue. The timeline doesn't add up. Stonehenge was built thousands of years before Merlin, or the people who supposedly inspired him, ever existed. As time went on, other theories popped up. Some claimed it was built by the Saxons or the Danes. Others insisted it was the Romans, or even the Egyptians. Basically, if there was an ancient civilization with a hammer, someone thought they built Stonehenge. Then came the 17th century, when early archaeologist John Aubrey suggested the monument was the work of Celtic priests known as the Druids. Later, William Stukeley, another antiquarian, helped spread that idea after discovering primitive graves near the site. The Druid theory really stuck, so much so that even today, modern Druids still gather at Stonehenge to celebrate the summer solstice, watching the sunrise line up perfectly with the stones. It's a powerful image, but here's the thing. There's no evidence that the ancient Druids built Stonehenge. In fact, by the time the Druids came along, Stonehenge was already thousands of years old. Modern archaeology has pretty much ruled out any connection to the Celts, the Romans, or the Arthurian legends. Instead, researchers have found much more down-to-earth explanations. Using tools like radiocarbon dating, DNA analysis, and ground-penetrating radar, archaeologists in the mid-20th century started piecing together a clearer picture of who the real builders might have been.
Anthony analysed the rock and discovered it had a unique date and composition.
Turns out they weren't magicians or foreign invaders. They were farmers and herders living right there in Neolithic Britain. These people grew crops, raised livestock like cattle and sheep, and traded goods across regions, even as far as Ireland and continental Europe. That means they weren't isolated villagers. They were part of a broader network, sharing technology, culture, and ideas. And their society was surprisingly organized. There were leaders and builders, planners and craftsmen, and probably spiritual figures too. They had art, music, rituals, and a deep connection to the land and sky. The kind of connection that might make someone spend generations constructing a monument aligned with the sun. What's even more interesting is that Stonehenge wasn't built by just one group. Many modern historians and archaeologists believe that different tribes contributed over time, each taking part in a different stage of construction. That could explain why the monument evolved. New people brought new methods, materials, and meanings. Artifacts discovered at the site, bones, tools, pottery, all seem to back that up. Some remains show evidence of travel from distant areas, meaning people likely came from all over Britain and beyond to help or to participate in whatever was happening there. It's wild to think about, right? Generations of people, each adding their piece to the puzzle, none of them ever knowing the monument would one day become a world-famous mystery. And now, modern science is adding yet another twist to the story. A recent, in-depth analysis of the stones themselves, their chemical makeup, origins, and placements is starting to challenge everything we thought we knew about Stonehenge.
The new discovery has changed the story of Stonehenge and those that built it. The tale is now of a people across Great Britain who were more interconnected and advanced than previously thought.
The Stonehenge mystery gets stranger. Stonehenge has always been full of questions, but recent research has added a new twist that makes things even more intriguing. One of the most important stones on the site, the altar stone, might not even come from the same area as the others. Scientists using advanced chemical and mineral analysis discovered that its composition doesn't match any of the known sources in Wales or southern England. Instead, it seems likely that it came from somewhere much further north, possibly Scotland or even Ireland. This opens up a lot of questions. If the altar stone came from so far away, why was it chosen? Was it part of the original construction, or did it arrive later, brought by a different group of people? And if it was moved intentionally, what made it so special that people went to such lengths to transport it? Previously, archaeologists assumed all the central stones, including the altar stone, were brought from the Preseli Hills in West Wales. That theory goes back to British geologist Herbert Henry Thomas in 1923. He noticed the inner circle stones seemed to share the same geological origin, and for decades that was treated as fact. Now, Richard Bevans, a geology professor at Aberystwyth University, is challenging that assumption. His team's analysis suggests the altar stone probably comes from an unknown northern quarry, throwing the old Preseli theory into question. It also complicates the idea that the builders of Stonehenge had a single, consistent plan for sourcing their stones. The altar stone is larger and of a different rock type than the other stones, which raises questions about its role in the site. Was it meant for rituals, or did it have symbolic importance that we just don't understand yet? Researchers have compared the altar stone's chemical and mineral makeup with over 50 different sites across Britain, from South Wales to Western England. So far, no match has been found. One particularly strange feature is its unusually high barium content, which makes it even harder to pinpoint where it came from. This has led to speculation that it might have formed in an unusual geological environment, like a volcanic eruption or even a meteorite impact. And that's not the only weird thing. The altar stone's arrival and positioning at Stonehenge remain a mystery. Unlike some of the other stones, there's no archaeological evidence of how or when it was brought to the site. Was it there from the start or added later? And if later, why would people move such a massive rock across the country? The story of the altar stone is reminding us that even after centuries of study, Stonehenge still has secrets it's not ready to share. This recent discovery is forcing archaeologists to rethink everything we thought we knew about Stonehenge's origins. It turns out, the more we learn, the more questions we have. And that makes you wonder, what other surprises could be hiding in plain sight on Salisbury Plain?
In the journal Nature, he says it could only have come from the far north of Scotland, here in the Orcadian Basin, which includes Caithness, Orkney and Moray Firth.
There are other intriguing aspects of Stonehenge that have been revealed by recent research conducted by universities and Historic England in the area surrounding the site. These discoveries give us a much richer picture of the landscape and the people who lived there thousands of years ago. For most of history, people have focused almost entirely on Stonehenge itself, the stones, the circle, the layout. But recent studies suggest that maybe the real story isn't just about the monument. It's about the land around it too. Using tools like ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry, researchers have identified more than just the well-known North Barrow. In fact, they found evidence of possibly a dozen small circular or oval enclosures, each surrounded by ditches and banks. Some even include post holes that hint at upright wooden posts, much like the early construction techniques at Stonehenge itself. Archaeologists call these smaller enclosures henges, borrowing the name from Stonehenge. The idea is that these sites share structural and architectural characteristics with the main monument. While we don't know exactly what rituals happened in these henges, the general consensus is that they were important hubs of religious or ceremonial activity. They might have been used for seasonal celebrations, astronomical observations, or rites of passage. Basically, they were the spiritual centers of the prehistoric landscape around Stonehenge. But the story gets a little darker. Evidence suggests that Stonehenge wasn't just a peaceful place. Carvings of early Bronze Age daggers and axes were discovered on some of the upright sarsen stones. Interestingly, these carvings were actually visible in early photographs of the monument, but no one really noticed them until Professor Richard Atkinson pointed them out in 1953. After that, more carvings were documented, and by 2005, archaeologists had identified 3 daggers and 44 axes, each shaped to resemble tools used around 1750 to 1500 BCE. What's particularly fascinating is that these carvings were added around 1,000 years after the stones were first erected. This suggests that later generations returned to Stonehenge to leave their mark, either to honor ancestors, assert ownership, or perform rituals. To dig deeper, Historic England commissioned a high-resolution laser scan in 2011, which uncovered 71 more axe carvings and a possible new dagger, bringing the total to 115. That's now the largest known concentration of Bronze Age axe carvings in Europe. Some scholars think these carvings might hint at violence or sacrificial rituals. Others suggest they were symbolic offerings to gods or spirits. Either way, they add a fascinating layer of complexity to what we thought we knew about Stonehenge. The more we study the stones, the more it seems the story of Stonehenge isn't just about the circle itself. It's about a dynamic, active landscape full of human activity, symbolism, and perhaps even secrets that we're only just beginning to uncover. Could there be even more hidden carvings or enclosures waiting to be found? The discoveries around Stonehenge suggest that this ancient site still has plenty of mysteries to reveal.
It's certainly a once-in-a-lifetime discovery for an archaeologist. And it's great to have such a range of ages as well. It really gives us a great snapshot of society, even though we do have the higher status individuals here.
The Anglo-Saxon skeleton discovery. Meanwhile, an Anglo-Saxon skeleton was discovered in a shallow grave just outside the Stonehenge stone circle, adding another layer to the story of this already fascinating site. The skeleton was originally unearthed by William Hawley, an archaeologist working at Stonehenge in the early 20th century. What caught Hawley's attention was the unusual way the body had been placed. Its position and orientation suggested it wasn't a careful burial. It seemed hurried, almost like whoever buried him didn't have time, or didn't care, to perform traditional rituals. This detail alone set the skeleton apart from other burials found nearby, which tended to be more methodical and ceremonial, giving clues that this was far from an ordinary interment. After its discovery, the skeleton was sent to London for further study. Unfortunately, it got lost during the chaos of World War II, when many buildings and artifacts were destroyed in the Blitz. For decades, it was assumed gone. But in the 1980s, archaeologist Mike Pitts rediscovered it at the Royal College of Surgeons, stored in a wooden box, where it had been tucked away and largely forgotten. Recognizing it as Hawley's find, Pitts decided it was time to examine it properly, giving this long-lost piece of Stonehenge's human history the attention it deserved. The results of modern analysis were shocking. The skeleton belonged to a young man who had died violently. The evidence showed he had been decapitated by a sharp metal blade, most likely a sword, with a single right-handed strike to the back of the neck. The cut was deep enough to sever the spinal cord and the jugular vein, causing instant death. To make things even stranger, the head was then placed on top of the body, but facing the opposite direction. This unusual placement has puzzled researchers, leaving open questions about the motives or beliefs behind such an arrangement. Was it meant to send a message, or was it part of some ritual that we simply don't understand? Radiocarbon dating gave us a clearer picture of when this happened. Between roughly AD 660 and 890, a period marked by Anglo-Saxon conflicts, raids, and political upheaval. Who killed him and why remains a mystery. He could have been a victim of a raid, a prisoner of war, a political rival, a criminal, or even a ritual sacrifice. It's also unclear whether he was killed at Stonehenge or somewhere else and later brought there. His burial could have been done by enemies, friends, or family. There are simply too many possibilities, and none can be confirmed without more evidence. Regardless of the circumstances, the fact that he was buried at Stonehenge shows that the site retained symbolic or cultural significance long after the original Neolithic and Bronze Age builders had finished their work. Stonehenge wasn't just a prehistoric monument, it continued to play a role in human activity and beliefs for centuries afterward, serving as a marker of identity, a spiritual hub, or perhaps even a place associated with fear or power. This skeleton is a rare glimpse into the human stories that unfolded around Stonehenge. Stories of violence, ritual, and perhaps politics. It reminds us that Stonehenge wasn't just a static monument frozen in time. It was part of a living landscape where generations of people lived, fought, and carried out their beliefs. Even after thousands of years, discoveries like this show that Stonehenge isn't done revealing its secrets. Who was this young man, and why was he laid to rest there in such a striking way? And what other surprises are hidden beneath the soil, waiting for archaeologists to uncover them? The more we study Stonehenge, the more we realize that every stone, every burial, and every artifact has a story. And we're only just starting to piece it together. What do you think of this gruesome discovery? Could we have been looking at Stonehenge the wrong way this whole time? How do you feel about the possibility of violence or sacrifice at Stonehenge? We would love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Thanks for watching, fam! For a more thrilling video, click now on the next video that pops up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more intriguing mysteries and discoveries.